Okay, so up until this point, I have not used my tablet. I've just been using my mouse. So things are looking a little bit blocky. I have blocked out my chunks of value on different layers. I use my mixer brush and liquify to blend the layers. So each layer has some definition. And then I use my eraser tool to clean up the edges. Well, sort of. I kind of rushed this because it was a demo. But you can see I have things on different layers so I can turn them off as needed. And I'm just going to end up cropping the edge of this out so I don't have to worry about my edges. And actually, I can do that to start here. To crop your paper, if you've got like your photo didn't completely fill your page, you can go down to one, two, three, four, this fifth tool, and you just want to make sure it's clear. You clear out any numbers that are there. And I'm just going to, oops, hit escape if you mess up, but I'm just going to click and I'm going to drag this in so that I don't go off the edge of the page. Just it cleans it up a bit. And then you just hit enter or click the little check mark. All right, so cropped it in a bit. I could still actually crop it in a little bit more. Enter. Okay, so now we're going to talk about adding detail. So for the detail, I plugged in my tablet. I'm going to go to my normal brush again, not the mixer brush. So you have to like click on it. B on your keyboard might take you to the mixer brush. It kind of goes in between the brushes. And I want to make sure that I have clicked up here. This area up here makes your pen pressure sensitive, though it might already kind of be. I just always make sure I press that, make sure it's selected. This over here will make it transparent. So if you click this one, it'll make it go from when you press hard, it makes it go 100% opacity. And if you draw lighter, it makes it go a little bit more transparent. That can be cool too, but I don't always leave that on. So I just want to make sure that I'm on the correct layer. And I also for this like to have my picture open because I have all my layers turned on right now and I'm not able to see through to my background picture. So you can open this on the dual screen. You can, mine's over here. I'm just gonna click and drag it and kind of, it's very tight. Like there's not a lot of room to work, but I can go up here and just kind of leave it up in the corner so I can see some of that detail. And then I can zoom into different areas as I need to. So right now, what we're gonna do is obviously this is right here, I'm clicked on this picture, so it's showing me the layers in that picture. So I need to make sure I click back on my painting. If I have that on the same screen, it might be easier to just have it open on your phone or something. But now I want to make sure I'm back here and I'm paying attention to my layers. So any detail that we're going to do, we're going to add a new layer. So for instance, these branches, I did a terrible job with. I would much rather draw these with my tablet because the lines are going to be much more delicate and they're going to go from like thick to thin really nicely and be more elegant. So I'm going to go and eyedrop that again. Um, and then I'm often using my mouse pad and I go back. So now see if I did branches with these, I'm going from thick to thin. If I went up here and I clicked that little opacity bullseye, oops, mine's not really letting me do that at the minute. Watch what that does. When I press lightly, oh, it's really it didn't let me do that again. When I press lightly, it goes very subtle, like it's not it's transparent. When I press hard, it makes it not transparent. So that can be neat for some of your detail as well. So I would actually probably redo this branch layer because there's just not a lot of detail on there that I like. So I can definitely just take a big eraser and erase that. Okay, so for the branches, if you go back to here, I could just use a round brush for a lot of my detail. And remember, I'm using the brackets next to the P on the keyboard to make my brush bigger or smaller, but definitely I could go up here as well. I also want to make my edge a little bit harder for the branches, though in the picture, they're kind of soft and fuzzy. So I can kind of play with that too. Um, One thing I mentioned the other day that I may not have mentioned in previous classes is if you have trouble drawing in specific directions, like sometimes it's easier to draw in one direction than another, you can rotate your page. It's down here. So sometimes I like to I can draw better from like left to right than right to left. So I can like rotate my page and move it around as I draw. And then you can always reset it up here. So if that's helpful for you, you definitely can do that. Okay, so if I had my branches here on this page in the background, I definitely see how I added the blobs of definition behind them. Um, and now I'm going to go in and make these pine needle details. So I would add another layer. So the only thing that, is on mixed layers like before are these layers of blobs of value. Now for your details, add lots and lots of layers so that you can always go in and like play with their opacity. You can erase parts of them. So I'm going to go actually to the eyedropper tool and I'm going to like sample some colors. I don't know if it'll let me. Is it sampling? Oh yeah, it does. It samples right from this other picture. And then go back to B. And then I could start like going into my picture here and like start adding some of those details, like little sketchy lines, little scribbles. You can definitely make this more painterly. It does not have to look exactly like the picture, but I think this definitely needs some more of those little lines and details and dots and things like that. But you're just going to build this up. Now, I might want to do one color at a time here even, change my brush thickness and things like that as I work. Because if things are on their own layer, look, when I erase, it's only erasing what's on that layer and not what's behind it. Also, I can turn down the opacity and just like make it a little more see-through if I need to, make something blend a little bit more. You can also go up to filter and go to blur. And I use Gaussian blur here. But you can blur out little layers too. Like, see how that blurred it? I can just move this along here and blur it a little more or a little less. So you could liquefy that layer if you wanted to up under filter. There's tons of different filters and they'll just apply to the layer you're on. So I can go in and then just start to adjust these. So I'm going to go in and into all of these layers and I can turn these off for now. And I just want to go to the layer above it. Like here's the sky, for instance. I'm going to turn off the sky layer. I'm going to add another layer and I'm going to paint in some of these clouds. So I would just go in and I could trace with this one. I can trace along it, but it's on its own layer because it's nice and bright. So I can do little scribbles. It's nice and sharp. So I don't like really want to have it on the sky layer. It's going to be above it. I can just go in and do little scribbles, do little speckles, and start like just drawing these clouds. So when I turn on this, they'll start to show up. And then if they're too strong, I could blur them, filter blur, and I could go here and I could like turn them down with the opacity. The final thing is you can use different brushes. So let me show you. If you go up here in this little folder, you're going to see all of these different brush settings. And we've looked in here before because remember some of you were getting some spotty brushes and you can play with the smoothness of the brown brush. But look at, there's all of these other brushes too that could be really, really cool. So if I was on my mountain, I go to my second mountain, which is that layer. I could add a layer above it and I could choose something like this to add some texture. So I'm going to make this nice and big. And I'm going to actually use my keyboard for this. I'm just going to go in and kind of add a little splatter. Now, if I keep doing this, it's going to look really repetitive and strange. So you might, with every click, want to rotate your brush a bit so it doesn't look too repetitive. You might even want to make your brush tinier or bigger so that it kind of doesn't get too repetitive. So I'm always rotating it. So here I just click, and you can like turn it to the side. It changes the shape. It changes the direction of the brush as you work. So I usually do that. And then these are all on one, that looks a little repetitive. These are all on one layer. So when I'm done, I could definitely go in and just turn down the opacity. So it just is subtly there. It's leaving little brush strokes and marks. And then anything I went off the edge with, I can just take my eraser because those splatters are the only thing on that layer and I can just get rid of them. So I could definitely change up colors and do that and just keep adding to it. So try these different brushes, but use them. You don't want to just have like a bunch of repetitive things. You've got to kind of play with the angle and change it up a bit. with that. Oh, I'm on the eraser tool. That's why it's not working. Definitely make sure you're on the correct tool as well. So you could see the eraser tool, when I have that open, it has brushes as well. So you can erase with the different brushes too. So yeah, for some of the striping on my mountains, this could be like kind of cool, but I probably want it, I don't know, to be maybe singular and make it kind of big. So, and I'd want to make sure I'm on the correct layer. So I'm adding more layers. That's the third mountain. I'm going to go here and add a layer above it. And then make sure I'm on the brush tool. So just make sure you're on the correct tool while you're working. So that looks really stripey, but this can look really cool if I make it really big. Look at that. It's like a cool, I don't want to streak it actually. I just want to make it go like that. So look at that cool watermark, and then I can turn it down and I can also erase it with my eraser tool. I'd probably just want to choose a normal eraser, make it really big. So you're just going to add lots of layers. You find the layer where you want to work, like go to, like click the little eye icon to see what's on each layer. That's my second mountain. Click on that layer and go the little plus sign and add a layer above it. So I could say this is the texture for that mountain or so on and so forth. So I could go in. I like to label these just so I know what's there. But you can definitely tell what's on a layer too, oops, by just clicking on the eye icon and turning it on and off. But adding these layers of detail and texture are going to make a big difference with your work. So second, I'm just trying to keep it organized. Usually the things above the layer are going to be, they go with that layer. You can kind of group them together, but we're just going to kind of just keep adding. Second, mountain texture. Okay. And then I would add different colors and things like that as well. So open that brush panel, play with the brushes, direction, size. You can play with the hardness of the edge. So brackets next to the P make the brush bigger or smaller. You just have to make sure your cap locks is not on. And then if you hold shift and do the brackets, it makes your brush harder or softer too. So I like to use my key commands. The other thing is you can make your brush kind of transparent up here. Make sure, or I usually just do it on its own layer, make the whole layer transparent to kind of blend it.